Well, welcome to Impromptu, the game for thinkers. I'm really excited today. I have my special guest, my son, my 8-year-old boy, Wes. And so he's excited. And so we're going to do Impromptu. And here's how it works. It's 3 5-minute conversations, right? I'm going to throw them out. We're going to talk for 5 minutes. Then Mr. Nate's going to tell us when it's time to stop, right? And for you, the theme of every question is about imagination, right? So we're just going to be talking about imagination, if that makes sense, right?
That's my specialty.
That's your specialty. I know. That's why I chose it. All right. All right. So here we go. All right. Here's the first one. I don't see a difference between thinking and imagining. What about you?
I feel like you do, because if you're imagining, you're actually thinking of something that is a fantasy.
Okay. Tell me what you mean. Like, and if you're thinking, what's the difference?
If you're thinking, you're actually working your mind, like if you go on a run.
Okay. All right. So what do you mean if I go on a run?
If you go on a run, it's like your mind that's working your body. But if you think, that means you're working your brain.
Oh, so thinking is like exercise for the brain.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. All right. And imagination is different how?
Because you think of stuff that's a fantasy instead of stuff that's real.
Well, why?
Because I think thinking is where you actually think about stuff that's in the real world so you can plan. But imagining, I think you can actually have your happy place doing imagining stuff that isn't even real.
Well, I think that's why I like to think of them as the same, right? Is because when you imagine, you get to kind of dictate or determine what happens, right? Like you get to, when you imagine, whatever you want to happen, happens, right? When you're imagining. Would you say that's true?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I would love to think of thinking in the same way, right? I think a lot of times we think of thinking as feeling like something gets to tell us how and what we should think, right? Where I'm like, what if we thought of thinking as a way to just let our brains be able to cover all kinds of stuff all at the same time, right? And so instead of a situation where you're only working with information that you may know, you start bringing in other information and possibilities, and it opens up a whole realm of thought, right? In my mind.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, you mean you want an example or you want me to explain?
example.
Okay. All right. So here's an example in my mind, right? The other day I was talking with one of your sisters, right? I was telling her, she was getting ready to go to school the next day and there was something she didn't want to do, right? And so I started talking to her and I started being like, hey, what about this? And what about that? And immediately she was like, no, right? And I was like, wait, stop and listen to it first, right? Stop and listen to it first before you know to it, right?
I was there.
You were there, I think, if you were paying attention. I don't know if you were
Yeah, I
now.
was either reading a book or...
Yeah. But in that, if I don't know if you remember, but at one point I said to her, hey, if you stop feeling like this and start imagining or thinking about what could be the good that might happen from this situation tomorrow, then all of a sudden you might feel better about what might occur, right? And so she was able to be like, oh yeah, I guess if that happens, I could do this. And if that happens, I could do this, right? Well, in my mind, that's imagination, right? That's imagination. You start imagining how you might like to feel or you might like to interact in the future thing. Whereas for me, that's the same thing as thinking, right? If you're thinking about tomorrow, you can think about what you'll do tomorrow and stuff like that, or you can imagine what tomorrow might be like. And the beauty for me of imagining is when you imagine what tomorrow might be like, you get to create how you'll feel in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Do you think it would be cool to be able to imagine or create how you get to feel tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it would be.
Think it would be? Why?
Because I would be able to create and think about my own world.
Okay, tell me. Give me an example. Tell me
So,
how it might work.
basing off of the knowledge you just gave me, I'm starting to see how your perspective.
Okay.
imagining and thinking can be used for as one, but sometimes they can be used as two different things.
Okay. So you can use them in either way, right?
Mhm.
I tend to think of thinking itself as imagination, right? And I
Yeah.
think other people maybe don't feel that way. And so a lot of times, ah, all right, that's okay.
Come
That's a,
on.
I know, that's one. All right. Oh, you ready for the next one?
Yes.